Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Beyond the Track. This is episode number 43. If you'd like to catch more episodes of this series, go to Supercross Live's YouTube. Of course, all the social media channels will lead you there. And we've had a lot of fun doing it. We're going to have a fun one today. It's Jason Butschky of the SGB Kawasaki team. We got a lot to talk about. A lot of your riders I'm friends with, so I got questions about them. But let's just open it up with a simple question. How was 2021 for you, the team, just an overall kind of set the stage with how the season went?
It went well. We met a lot of our goals, but we fell short on some as well, which I mean is typical. I started the race team in, I guess 2020, and then COVID hit. So I've yet to do a real season of management or race team ownership or anything. So all the curveballs that have been thrown at us are new to me, and I'm trying to learn how to do this in unnormal circumstances. So it's been tough.
So you started out during the 20 season, then you do the 21 season. I mean, are you excited for the hope of maybe just a normal one so you can understand how the full shebang works? Because I mean, you came in some interesting times.
I did. I mean, yes, I want to do a normal season. I think there's a lot of challenges that the COVID has created for us. I mean, we're a small budget race team. I always joke and say we're the working class team because some of our riders have jobs during the week. My mechanics, some of them have jobs elsewhere. Some of them are employed by me here in the shop. So these long stays, it's tough on us because we have to take off work or this and that. So it's hectic. But I feel like it's also easier for me to blame all of my own mistakes on COVID. So it works out well.
Oh man, I like you already. Taking ownership of things that aren't even all the way your fault. I love it. That's how I live. That's how I live my life too, man. I will throw this at you though, and I'll give you a compliment first. You got a big team, and I love that. Like I love when a team is willing to throw another bike out there, another rider, and just like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to, but you do anyway. So I appreciate that. I love it. But my question is, being a lower budget, and that doesn't sound right, but you know what I mean, a team that has a small budget, new, why come out with such a big roster, so many riders? I mean, you got name brand riders too. So, I mean, I appreciate it, but man, why do you do that to yourself right out of the gate?
What other way is there to do it? If I'm gonna join this program and we're going to do it to the best of my ability. And honestly, for me, my background isn't from some fast motocross guy going up through the ranks and I retired and now I'm doing a team ownership or business adventure. It wasn't for me. I have a different start of my program. I rode dirt bikes. I sucked, on a retrospect of what it is. I was horrible. It wasn't taking me anywhere. So I took different routes. And when I came back, it started with, kind of like the AJ Catanzaro and Jordan Jarvis thing, and I was just helping them out. And I was just like, why can't I do the things that other teams are doing, or why can't I do more on my end, And that's kind of where it started, and it snowballed out of control. And my whole thing is I liked helping people. That's what this whole thing was about from the start, and it'll never not be about that. And I even pulled in fill-in riders with guys that are not even making motos most of the time, just because, they work hard. They represent my company and what it's about. And for me, it's not about, the race results and those types of things. I think we're past those days, to be 100% honest. And I might get a lot of, backlash from that, but with all media and all this marketing stuff, I think the whole race on Sunday, win on Monday is an outdated statement.
It's crazy you say that. We're going to get into that because I agree with you. And I look at your roster of riders. You obviously have some cool ones, popular in different ways. They're all different. But I do want to know more about your background so everybody understands where you are coming from. Because again, you didn't come up in the sport like a lot of the others did. Your background is very, very unique. I know what you did before this, and just kind of explain like what you were doing before. Again, you rode, so there was an interest there, but what made you transition from what you were doing into this new chapter of your life?
So I broke my back in 2007 racing. And at that point, my parents pulled my funding plug from my racing career. And we're like, hey, this isn't working. You're not really good. So go do something else. And so I did. And I have a very big family of law enforcement officers. So I joined the police department down in Baltimore. And I started there when I was 18. And I worked midnights for a solid 11 years there. And I enjoyed it. I loved police work. I loved the adrenaline side of it. I thought I worked with a bunch of great people that were doing, great things. And I mean, that's a whole, we can spend hours talking about things I've seen or things we've done and all that type of stuff. But it was very enjoyable for me. I think my personality went really well with it. I'm that guy that you'll never get out of life if you take it too serious. And that's just the way I've always been. So it worked well for me. And then I was still working on bikes and still doing stuff. And then my father passed away in 2014. And when he passed away, I was just lost. He was my mechanic when I raced, and he was also a police officer. I never worked with him. But I would talk to him 2 to 3 times a day. I would see him all the time. And he passed away of a heart attack, and it was very sudden. And it was a difficult one for me. So at that point I was like, well, let me try to fill the void, and I'll just build a dirt bike track at my house, which I did. And you get done doing that and you're just like, all right, that didn't work. So then I was like, well, you know what, I'll start racing again. And I told you before, I sucked. I went back out and raced, and I broke my ankle 2 weeks later. So I was just like, yeah, that's still a reminder that I'm no good at it. And we kept going, and I decided I was going to start a business, and I would name it after him and just see where it went. It was more of a kind of a fun thing. I don't want to sit here and say it was like a joke, because it really wasn't a joke, but it was something that I was just kind of doing on the side, and it kind of took off way quicker than I expected or ever thought it would. And then I remember talking to one of my good friends, Anthony, who's been with me the whole time, and he's just like, hey, this is what I want to do. I can't wait to do this. And he was just like, hey, let's get a logo first before we start talking about all these big things. And then we kind of flash back, and, within the couple years of us running the business, I've kind of accomplished all the things I wanted to do, which is awesome. But I'm that guy. I'm that person that just wants to keep going and going and trying to take it to a different level and a different outlook of everything. So we kept going. We kind of have made a name for ourselves, obviously in the suspension area, but more so in the coating side of things, which has been great for us. It was actually one of the most embarrassing moments of my life was doing suspension. We did some coatings and with a pro rider, and we failed miserably. It didn't work. There was a lot of things with the coatings that I wasn't, familiar with, and I was just ignorant to. And we ended up losing the rider, and it was bad. So I took it personal, and I spent a lot of money and time trying to figure out how we could make this better. And I found a company that was willing to work with us on that aspect of it. And I spent a lot of time, a lot of resources up there. And with that happening, when I did it, I told them, if I was going to teach you about suspension, I don't want other suspension companies stealing our knowledge. So we contracted in for a very long term that they would be the only ones they're allowed to use tolerance checks with and things like that with our coatings. So we were able to lock in an actual performance stuff that was durable and holding up to the levels we needed it to, and no one else could through our place. So then we do coatings for over 40 some suspension companies across the world. Some, large ones here in the US and some other stuff like that. So we've been able to hold that market, and we've had such good results with that we've again contracted with the same place to be the only suspension company they will work with now. So before, other companies could go there but not get the same quality. And most of your large companies would still go through us because they value the quality over the price. Whereas the smaller companies were more worried about their price points than they were the quality points. So they would bypass us and go there. So now we've kind of stopped that all from happening, which is good because now we can create like an industry standard and kind of get rid of some of the myths and some of the bad qualities of coatings that have been done because of just improper things. And we can get it to where they're durable and stuff. And yes, we still have issues, but I stand behind my stuff and we work with it. And that's how we keep growing and testing and all that stuff.
Wow. Well, first off, thank you for what you did, and again for what your family did. That's appreciated by many, and definitely by me. So thank you for that. Moving into the motorcycle side of things, the suspension. Where's the background in that? Like, was that something you were always interested in? Just kind of take me back to the beginning of that, because when it comes to a motorcycle, there's so many parts of the bike that are important. Suspension being, I would, in my opinion, the most important. But what would draw you into that specific field on the motorcycle?
You ready? It's the only thing I didn't know how to do. I understood how engines worked. I understood how, everything else was, and I knew how to tear bikes apart and put them back together. But I did not understand how suspensions worked at all. And for me, it's one of those moments where like things happen for a reason type stuff, because I didn't know anything about it. And I never really had any desire to learn about it. And after my father passed away, I was like, I want to start a suspension company. And it was just one of those things. I couldn't tell you why. I didn't know anything about it. And at the time I had some good support with Race Tech and the people out there. And I called them up and, was like, hey, this is my crazy idea. And they were all for it. They treated me like family. They let me come out there for a long time. We did a lot of work with them. Rob and Sydney from Race Tech were super great for me. And they taught me a whole lot of stuff. And I'm passionate in what I do. I'm the biggest fan. So the passion just kind of took it to the next level. I was working out of my garage. And I remember Checkers from Race Tech, who does like all their marketing and things like that, called me and was like, hey, we want to make you a center. And I was like, okay, well, let's do that. I don't know what that is, but let's do it. And we started going into it. And he was like, well, just send me a picture of your storefront and all this stuff. And I was like, I don't have a storefront. Like I work Baltimore police midnights, and I do suspension during the day, and I try to say hi to my family at dinner time, and I repeat. So I know we were lucky enough to become, a Race Tech center out of my garage, which is not very common for them. I don't know if that's been done or hasn't, but it was one of those things that was very good for me, and our numbers of sales were really good. And and my knowledge was I'm constantly trying to learn more and more, and I'm not the person who feels like I know everything, and I'm always trying to learn more. And that's why I enjoy working with so many other suspension companies, whether it's coatings or not. I mean, there's times I call, other companies and asking questions. I'm not ashamed to admit that. Like I'm young in this game. There's no doubt. Those guys have, Mitch from Pro Circuit. I look up to him like there's no other. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to start what I started. And I remember back in the day when Mike Brown and was going against in Grant Langston and Ryan Hughes in 03. And I just remember seeing all the coatings every time they did jumps. It was fascinating to me. And I respect that. And so that was like, I would call and ask questions. I wanted to learn, and it's helped me get to where I am. And I'm honestly honored to be able to work with a lot of these companies.
I'll just throw this out there. It's pretty admirable that you want to work with other suspension companies and you're not afraid to work with them. And there's I feel like that industry sometimes can be kind of competitive and very weird, but you, again, wanting to learn more willing than most. And I always find it funny because a lot of suspension companies, they're private, which they should be, because they come up with, innovative ways to do suspension. But it's funny how all the factory riders, as good as they are, they have the best technicians in the world. You'll hear a rider still say like, oh, my bike wasn't great one night, and the next night it is. You know what I mean? So it's so up and down as far as what setting works for which guy on what day, that I kind of find it funny when they get a little protective like that. So I just want to say I admire the fact that you're willing to work with other companies and just enhance your knowledge, because I feel like suspension's never done, right? I mean, have you ever built a perfect set of suspension? It's never perfect.
No,
right?
I mean,
you're always developing, always.
And you know how it goes. I mean, the suspension can be great, and then they argue with their girlfriends or wives or somebody else, and the suspension's no longer any good.
Yeah.
So like, you got to be able to throw in some extra shims for like the arguments with the spouse or whatever reason is. Yep. I mean, and again, that's not always the case, but it's very common that you'll get riders that are frustrated with their riding, and they'll be like, we need to change this, and change this. And it happens all the time in a free practice. We'll make all these changes, and then we'll get back to the truck, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, no, just go back to where we started. I think, and that like, they know when they came off the track, they were frustrated with themselves. They were trying to adjust it, and and it just wasn't working where they wanted, and they go back and they'll go out and have a great practice. But then there are times where we're off and we need to make the adjustments. There's definitely not one way. But I also think back to the whole working with other suspension companies, there's a couple strategies to that. One, on a business level, if you have good relationships with other suspension companies, they're not going to badmouth you to, other clients and things like that. Right. They're going to say, hey, he does a great job. And that's exactly how I handle with all of them. They're not going to send you people, obviously, because we're all here for money, but they're not going to badmouth you, which is very important. So keeping good relationships with all the other companies is great. But I do send people to other companies when I feel like they do a better job at that area than I do. And there's a ton of suspension companies that I would say are in a higher level of reputation and longevity in the industry than myself, and they send me stuff, and it's flattering because, again, I respect them and I look up to them still to this day. So when I hear someone say, hey, this company sent me your way, it's I almost get lost for words for it, because it's an amazing thing. And I also have come from a background of translucency, like be transparent with everything. There's no mistake we can't fix with honesty. I mean, you can sit here and avoid it, or you can run around, try to hide it. And I think it's going to come to the surface and it's going to look bad. So if we sit here and say, hey, this is us, and I try to do the same thing with our race team, we're very, transparent with everything we do. I'm not afraid to say that all the sponsors we use we use their product. There's no sticker games there. There's none of that stuff. I wouldn't want to work a deal with somebody if I can't believe in their stuff. And that's very big for us. And I'll be the first one to throw on our social media pages when I feel like our issues on race day are my fault. I expect my riders to own up to when they have bad days, and what kind of management or leader or figure like that would I be if I can't do the same crap?
Makes sense completely. I'll ask one more suspension question before we move on. I'm a big fan of the Race Tech model. Race Tech is Race Tech, but then there's a lot of these centers all over the country that are specific for that territory. My son gets his suspension done by DRS Suspension. They're in Northern California. They're a Race Tech authorized dealer. And what's it been like working with them? And is that where that mentality comes from, where you're less, I wouldn't say less competitive. You're obviously competitive. You always want to be the best, but that willingness to work with others, does that come from that Race Tech model, where they have so many different suspension companies that kind of work with them, connected to them, share with them, they share with others? Is that where some of that mentality comes from, is just working in that Race Tech model?
I would say absolutely. I definitely think it helps, because it is a larger family, and there's times where if I need something, I could call any one of those Race Tech centers and feel like I have a trusted answer no matter what. And I do feel like the family side of that. But I also believe that personally, I don't look at other suspension companies as my competition. I feel like every single rider you're going to lose at some point in general across this board. So, and doesn't matter what you do. It could be a performance thing. It could be a price point thing. It could be another deal. It could be this. So I look at trying to grow the business to my goals. And I think looking at myself as my own competition, instead of comparing myself to, great companies that have been around for decades longer than me, that, I would love to sit at a table and talk to, but I don't probably bring much to their table as far as like suspension settings and history. So I don't want to sit here and look at those guys as my competition, because I don't think I stand up to them all the time with that. So I'd rather hit my own marks and do my own things and keep trying to change the coding game, or do this, or try to put a different aspect of the race team side of things. I have a couple things in the works for next year, race team wise, that I think is trying to venture outside the box, and we'll see where everything goes.
Rad. Okay. Let's transition then from suspension. Again, you're working nights, you're working days. It's growing. You get the relationship with Race Tech. When does the team, you said AJ Catanzaro, Jordan Jarvis was kind of the start. Was that was that an official start? Was there anything before that was more unofficial? Were you getting involved a little bit? Or was it, hey, I'm going in, and you went in with those two? Take me back to that period of how it all started with the team.
So I was doing suspension for AJ in 2018, but 2019, he started his own program with, I think, Vortex, like supplied him a Sprinter van. He was going to go do his own thing. I told him I would build the bike for him off the bat. I was still, like I said, doing police work at the time. I told him I'd build the bike, got everything squared away. And I was like, would you have a mechanic lined up? He was like, no, I don't have anything. So I was like, all right, I'll build you, toolbox, air compressor. I'll get you everything a mechanic would need. So that way you can decide what you're going to do. I'll go out to the first 3 rounds with you and get you started. And I got to get back to work anyway, so I can't do the whole season with you. And he was like, I appreciate that. And AJ and I have a very, very good relationship. And I went out there, I wrenched for him for 3 rounds. Everything was great. I think round 4 came and he used, I don't know who the mechanic was. And I think some plastics were falling off, and it was one of those things. And then it would go a couple rounds, and then I'd get the phone call from AJ saying, hey, the bike needs help. Like, it's bad. It's not safe. I need you to do this. And like I said, with me and trying to help and do all this stuff, I took more responsibility or more weight on my own shoulders than I should have when it came to that. So it was frustrating for me because I'd get there and the toolbox would be in a disarray, and the bolts all over the bike would be different sizes. They're not from the OEM. So like I needed 13 different T-handles to work on this bike that I should only need 3 for. And it got frustrating. And it kept falling back on me. So I just told AJ at the end of the year, I was like, hey, I can't do this on a mechanic level with you if we're running it this way. Like, something's got to change. I was like, I don't mind helping you out with that end of it. And I'll start the program, and we can run it kind of like my way, or I can just be your suspension guy. And he was like, all right, you do it. And that snowballed into some shit. I can tell you that.
That's awesome. So I'm assuming you're looking at the program and it's just loose, and you're like, look, I can't be in this loose I can either be the suspension guy where I know that I can do a good job for you, or I got to clean this up. Is that where you were at? It was just time to clean up.
I would build the bike, and then I would be stressing over failures over the weekend because someone else is touching it. And it was
right.
It was killing me. I mean, honestly, anxiety wise, it was stressful. I couldn't say that it was enjoyable. And then, like I said, it would always come back, and you know how riders are, and that's all of them. It's last minute. So it's now Thursday before a Supercross race, and he needs me somewhere to fix something. And I'm his go-to guy that he trusts to make it right. And I have to call my lieutenant at the precinct saying, hey, I need to fly somewhere here. Like, can you mark me off, or try to find someone to work for me? And just like I said, it was just too much. It was too much.
Thanks. Okay, so helping him out, you're going to take the next step. 2020 rolls around. Where's the relationship with Jordan Jarvis? Where did that start? How did she get involved with you in the launch, now the official launch of your team?
So I started helping her out when she was doing the 125 dream races.
Yep.
With some other stuff kind of like on the side. It wasn't anything official. And then they kind of switched to run our suspension at, I want to say it was probably end of 2018, and I could be wrong on the dates. So, but they switched to us. 2019, they ran a bunch of amateur stuff in the beginning of the year, and she was going to make her pro debut. So I kind of helped her and her father with some transport to a lot of the rounds, set up, was there for suspension side, and just kind of like, we weren't a team. So I don't want to sit here and say I was managing a team, because it wasn't that way. They had their own sponsors. They had their own program. They were running Yamahas. I just brought my trailer, set it up for them, gave them a decent platform to kind of help them out at the nationals. And I did that on because I had the idea of I wanted to start a team. So I figured kind of running it that way, seeing how they operate and try to learn more from that side of things was beneficial to me. So it worked out well for both of us. And then that's when I was in the process of marketing and trying to build a team. And it's tough. There's so many teams that come and go. So sitting here, from a person that doesn't have any like actual industry experience or connections, just trying to make it work was extremely tough for me. And I had a lot of speculation, a lot of doubt. And that's kind of when I was like, you know what, we need to go do straight rhythm and prove to people that we can at least do what we say we're going to do, and that's when I was like, all right, we're going to build 3 bikes for straight rhythm. We're going to have some fun. I have 3 weeks to build them. And I put myself in another, corner like I always do. And we made it work. And then that's when, like, honestly, right after Straight Rhythm, a couple of the companies I was talking to that seemed like to be up in the air were like, hey, I didn't think you were going to make that work. And you did. And they jumped on board and they've been there ever since. So it worked out well.
Wow. So yeah, I'm assuming if you're a sponsor and you're interested, you're putting together something new, there's going to be obviously a little bit of a hold back there. You don't know for sure, does this guy have what it takes to really do this? So I guess with Straight Rhythm being a success for you and these companies launching in, was that like a big confidence booster to you, knowing that, okay, now I have people believing in me? I would assume that's a confidence builder, but was it also a little pressuring knowing now I have companies that believe in me? I can imagine that being both emotions a little bit.
It was, but I also didn't know what I was doing. So like, I'm like, all right, I think I've seen enough, dirt bike videos, and I've watched enough Supercross and motocross to know the in and outs. But when you really start doing it, you really don't, and we kind of get back to the big team side of things, but obviously sponsors are trying to get as much bang for the buck as they can. So they want more riders and they want more things. And I understand it. And from a business, mentality, because again, it's I'm a business owner from that side of it. So I look at it and it makes sense. And for me, it was more about helping people out and just trying to have as much help from my own pocket as I could. Because a lot of it comes out of my own pocket, which is unfortunate because I don't like spending money that way. But my rule is if I'm going to spend all my money, I'm going to at least have the people I enjoy being around on the weekends when I waste it. So, I have a team that's fun to be around. And when I get there and, I watch the money signs go up in the air and I'm just like, all right, well, we had fun.
Dude, I love it. That's so much commitment. That's that all-in commitment. I'm assuming too, that as you're doing this more, you're learning a lot more. Do you draw a lot from your riders? Because I know AJ's very smart. He's experienced. He really gets it. I don't know Rod Bell and Smith as well individually, but A-Ray obviously, as goofy as A-Ray is, he's like my favorite, but he's got a lot of knowledge too, because he's been in this thing now for a while. So as you're growing this thing, how much do you lean on them? Again, you're the leader, you're the manager, but I feel like being a good leader and a manager means you need to be capable to listen to people that maybe aren't in your role. So, how much do you draw off of an AJ, an Alex Ray, even a Jordan Jarvis and her experiences to just help you kind of fine tune what you are doing?
Yeah, I learned a lot from them. Truthfully, Alex was a big part of the program. Alex called me, and before the 2020 season, I think he called me like the end of October and was like, hey, I heard you're starting a team and I don't have anything right now. And I was like, yeah, our budget's not there. And I explained it to him and I asked him what he wanted and he told me what he wanted and it was nowhere near where we were going to be. But I respect the fact that I gave him an open end of question of like, hey, what do you want? And he answered it. And he called me back a couple days later and was like, hey, can we do it for this? Can we make this work? And I said, absolutely. And he was extremely understanding that it was a startup team. And he's been very good with that. He helped me a lot, connected me to a lot of people. I would tell him what sponsors we had on board for the bike back then. And he was like, okay. And I told him what we would need. And he would make some phone calls and get me set up with some other people and help me connect a lot of people in the industry. Alex comes off with that, definitely that West Coast, I don't care vibe, like that have fun. But I'll tell you what, after every weekend, whether it's Saturday night or Sunday morning, he will text me and say, thank you for everything each weekend, man. And it means a lot. It's stressful for me. It's a lot. And to a guy like that, who's had a lot of different roles on a lot of different teams and knows a lot of people, to still be appreciative every single time is awesome. And Rod Bell's another one that will always text me every weekend after the races are over and just say, hey, thanks for everything. We're sorry it didn't go this way or this and that. And it's awesome to see the appreciation out of them, and they all do it in different ways. And not everyone just texts me, which doesn't mean they don't appreciate it, because they do. But those two I consider and say, like, every single weekend. Even in last year's outdoor campaign when Alex Ray was, going through hell in a handbasket real quick, was hey, sorry, this happened this weekend. Let's get it squared away. People don't realize that about Alex, that I think people should know about him. He's also one to figure out his own problems. When something breaks on his bike in California, I'll get a phone call from Alex, and he'd be like, hey, this broke. And it's like, all right, what do you need from me? And I'm thinking like budget. And he'd be like, nothing. I was just letting you know it broke. I already took care of it. I already ordered it. I already contacted this person. Like he's got it. He knows what he's doing, and it's good for me. It helps me out.
So I love Alex. Known him since he was a little kid, and we're buddies now. But I can't help but tease the guy because he is a wrecking ball out there, and he knows it. What's it like from your perspective when it comes to him? He's just hard on things, man. I always joke around about, man, whoever he's riding for better have spare subframes and radiators because he is just gnarly. What's it like from your perspective working with him? I would imagine you admire how hard he tries and how hard he goes for it. But dude, he's destructive sometimes. He can mangle a dirt bike.
Man, and you'll break things that you never thought would break. Like it's not even like your typical like, all right, we blew a motor this time. I mean, he will literally break things you would never think would break. And like I said, with him, we have 4 spare motors on the truck because of him. But I watch him ride and he gives me everything he's got every single time on that track. There's not a single time I watch him and I'm like, man, he could have gave me more. No, if he gave me an ounce more, the bike would have grenaded or he would have, lawn darted. There is no more he can give me. And there's some times in those LCQs, I just wish he could get better starts because it would make my anxiety go way down. But he'd get dead last starts and I'm like, well, I guess Alex is out of it. And then you go 2 laps into it and he's 5th or 6th place and you're like, shit, he's in spot now. Like he's gonna ride like there's no one getting in his way. And then you see Cade in 4th place and you're like, oh, I know where Cade's going. And it's it's just, I love the fact that he gives me that fight every single time, that warrior mentality. I'm all about that. I'm a true believer of the fact that like we never rise to any occasion. You fall back to your training and your mindset on everything. So you always go down a level when things get tough. And he is the proof of that. Like when things go tough, he just rides his heart out and will pull it out. He doesn't quit. I don't understand sometimes why in the heat race, if he crashes, he still charges all the way back up to catch up to the tail of the pack instead of just coming in and taking a breath, but he doesn't have that quit. And I do enjoy that. And back to the whole him breaking everything, I have anxiety the entire time I watch him ride because I'm so scared of what's going to happen next, whether it's him or the bike. But I enjoy the drive and the passion. The outdoor nationals scares me because that's twice for 30 minutes I got to watch him ride, and it's very nerve-wracking. But I tried my best to build a bulletproof bike again, and I thought that last year, but he proved me wrong. Back to like an exhaust situation we had last year, a lot of exhausts were falling off his bike. We know that there's an issue with the subframes where the subframe mount would break. So we would get that braced. There was no secret. We had it braced. Then we would use the FMF, hanger brackets to help as a secondary support. But he kicks the mid pipe so hard that it was pulling the threads out, not even breaking the subframe, pulling the threads out. And then the exhaust would fall off because the bolt wasn't there anymore. So we ended up doing the strengthened subframes, the exhaust hanger, running a longer bolt with Loctite and a lock nut on the back to keep the exhaust on. So it wasn't the fact that we weren't doing anything to fix it. It was just everything we did to fix it created another weak point and would break. So I think we got it. I just put all of his parts with like a serial number and just say return to SGB Racing. So when AMA finds it, they just bring it to me.
Do you think like the manufacturer, say Kawasaki, looks at him like a double-edged sword, where it's like, this is great. This guy's going to show us all the weak points on the motorcycle, but this is also bad because he's going to show all the weaknesses on the motorcycle. I feel like he's just good and bad with that. Like he's going to show you what needs improvement, but he's going to show you what needs improvement. You know what I mean? I feel
like every manufacturer likes him. He's not using their bike. We'll put it that way. Like, but he's a great test rider. He gives good feedback, and he won't break anything you throw at him. So if you want something that's durable, then throw it that way.
And just to be clear, we love Alex, right? Just because he's going to probably listen. We love Alex. He's just the best.
He's all right.
He's the best. I love the guy. Hey, so tell me now about how you do your job. Again, I don't know Rod Bell and Smith as well. I don't know their personalities. I've heard things, and I heard they're great guys, but I'm thinking of Alex Ray and AJ Catanzaro, and I'm not seeing the same person here. AJ is like very calculated. He kind of thinks layered. Alex is more, you're just send it. Their personalities, they're both like media darlings, in my opinion. The media, everyone loves them, but they're so different. But how do you as a manager manage those personalities, knowing that they need to be treated a little bit different? And you got these two guys that, in my opinion, it's from the outside looking in, it seems polar opposite. Maybe you see some similarities, but how do you handle a team when you have those different personalities, especially those two?
On a personal level, they get along really well. I mean, obviously their riding styles are totally different, and how you talk to them is a little different. AJ works more off of the positive vibe, the whole, like, let's keep it positive. Let's not talk about the negatives. Let's just keep going into it. And he works really well that way. Alex is more so like, hey, tell me what I'm doing wrong and we'll fix the negatives. Like, and so the approach is definitely different. I wish you could kind of mix the two riding styles though a little bit. I think it'd be fun to watch.
Be good.
Like if you could mix the two, it would be great. I mean, I think, they both talk to each other. I mean, obviously, Alex Ray's style as far as body positioning and footwork and all that stuff is the opposite of AJ's. But then again, if we can sit here and talk about the drive and the fight, they're in different spots. AJ doesn't have that fight that, Alex has. And I think there's a lot of reasons behind that make a ton of sense. His motocross schools is where AJ's future is. AJ's, doing very well for himself with that type of stuff. And he knows that's where his future, his money and all that stuff is. And he races because he loves racing. So how do you motivate a guy that loves racing, but makes more money doing other stuff to try harder racing? And there is no motivation there. You can't. It's all self-motivation. And he wants to do well because, he has that competitive stuff in it, but he also knows that if he gets hurt racing a dirt bike, the other parts of his aspect of life is going to go down. So
right.
I respect that, but AJ does wonders for my business. I work with his schools. He sends me, business all the time. I mean, we're getting sets in weekly from students of his, which is huge. So AJ has a huge value with SGB racing, and we get a lot of the social media stuff. I was like, why is AJ even on the team, or why is that? And it's simple. He's easy to work with. He doesn't cost me a lot of money, and he advertises my business to the point where we have a huge ROI because of it. And you know how it goes. The sponsorships, a lot of times there is no ROI. They're with you until the next discount or next opportunity. And that's not what I have with AJ. And you really can't put a value on that to me.
Makes sense. AJ, the thing that stands out to me is communication. We had him on Race Day Live this year, and he's really intelligent, especially with body positioning. And I'm sure, again, that helps you too, because he seems so calculated upstairs to where I would assume on the suspension side, is he fun to work with? Having someone that thinks about things a little bit differently, is very calculated, can communicate well. Is he a pretty big asset to you as far as you developing maybe the pro side of your business? Because of course you're doing amateurs, you're probably doing mini bikes, but on the pro side, is he a pretty big asset as far as communicating and helping you just grow your development?
Absolutely. I mean, he knows what he wants, and he's very good at relaying information. Once you get through like his terminology of stuff, which is good and bad, it's different than everyone else's. Like, he will refer to mushy suspension as a positive thing, and most people don't refer to mushy suspension as a positive thing. So once we got through those hurdles of like the words and the terminologies and stuff like that, he is very good. I will tell you, since he is so calculated and so precise with everything, he likes a very soft setting compared to most pros, to the point where we actually run like a wood setup for his outdoor bike when he rides outdoors. It would be too soft for a C rider. And
But
that's,
he likes to feel the ground. I mean,
but he
it
likes to
comes
feel
down
it.
to he
He's
wants
so
to feel the
precise.
ground.
He likes to jump off his braking bumps. He likes to play that finesse game. And
Yep.
so he likes a very soft suspension. Whereas Alex and Rod Bell and even Smith, they want it to be stiff, and they want it to be extra stiff because they know they're going to make, I don't want to say mistakes, but they're going to be a little bit more out of control on the wild side. So they want to have that suspension there to save them when, things start going south. And that's, I know Alex would rather set his suspension up to be there so he had extra travel when it does go south instead of it being perfect every single moment.
Back to the team side, and let's focus on race day. Again, you have a big lineup. You got all these Cali 450s lined up, different personalities, different riders, different goals. What is race day like for you, having to manage that many people, again, that all have their own goals, their own personalities, their own resumes, even in Supercross? Like, again, Rod Bell and Smith. I mean, I know Rod Bell's an outdoor shredder. Supercross is newer. What's it like for you on race day, having these different personalities, different goals, different backgrounds, and having to line them all up together? And of course, in races where you have them all four together. I mean, what's that like for you? You already said you have anxiety. I'm assuming it's through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, always. I mean, but I enjoy it. Like, we have a fun atmosphere in our pits. I mean, and I think that's why most people will come by and want to hang out with us on that side of things, because we have a fun, lighthearted. I don't put pressure on the guys for a results thing. I don't think there's anything that we can't accomplish on a media reach, and a realistic level of getting people to talk about us on a results page thing. I mean, can anyone tell me who took 12th place off the top of their head at, any Supercross? I mean, probably not, and so what does that mean? And nowadays you have some amazing, talented riders that don't even race and are making great livings, 7-figure livings, not even racing or doing that because of their media and marketing reach. So where we are in our day and age, I don't want to put pressure on my riders to have a result. I would rather see them have fun, have fan interaction. It was awesome for me because during the COVID times, a lot of other teams weren't giving away plastics and stuff like that in the pits like they traditionally have. And I would bring plastics from the shop or other places and sign and throw them out over the fence to kids and fans. And that's what this is all about. So for us, if we can have an impact on the fan side of things or have an impact on someone's fun experience here, I think we can accomplish more than me putting pressure and saying, hey, you got 17th, Alex, why didn't you get 15th? I just don't see the value there. And maybe that's why I'm still at a mediocre race team and not anywhere else, but that's just my viewpoint of it.
When it does come to goals, because obviously everyone's still goal oriented, what are the goals for you on a given Saturday night when you line up your entire team? And then a follow-up question to that, this is kind of a hard one, I'll put you on the spot, but was there any night in particular where you felt those goals were met the most, or something may have happened with one of your riders where you're like, man, that was just a standout great night where you're going home going, that was great? You know what I mean? It might be the whole team, it might be one individual, but what are the goals for your four riders? And is there a night that stands out to you where those goals were, heavily exceeded?
So our goals going into Supercross was, I mean, there's no lying here. I expect Alex Ray to make every main. I think he's a main event guy. I expect him to make every main, and we fell short on that. And that was a high goal, with how talented the field was and the kind of scheduling we have. It's, but I did want to make as many mains, and he's my main event guy every weekend. I'm hoping Alex is in here, and I'm hoping we have another guy. And my other goal was having 2 riders in the main event, and we fell short. It is
close.
What it is.
Close.
We were close a couple times. I mean, I was really excited for Jeremy Smith at Indy 2, I think it was. He was running 3rd. And we'll go back to a management level. I was about as nervous as it could be because Jeremy Smith was running 4th. Alex Ray was 5th, and Alex Ray was noticeably faster. And it was getting close, and I was like, oh, this is not going to go well. And I had a good feeling that one of my guys was going to end up on the ground, and it not being Alex Ray. So Jeremy Smith tucked the front end coming into a corner by himself, and Alex Ray made it into 4th place. And and qualified in, and Smith didn't. And as I was bummed for Smith, but I'll be honest with you, on a management level, that was the best outcome I saw that night, was Smith tucking the front wheel and not being thrown off the track by Alex.
And not having his front wheel tucked for him.
Yeah. Alex is like a shark. His eyes roll in the back of the head. He smells blood in the water, and he's ready to go. And I'm not mad at it. I mean, that's how he makes his money. That's racing. But
that's how you get in those mains.
I didn't want to go back to that tent. I probably would have went to someone else's tent and just set up. It would have been easier. But back to your question, there was a lot of times where we were really close, but Atlanta 3 was our standout. I mean, everyone rode really well. Alex was having a really tough night in the heat. Rod Bell got like a 3rd place start, and Smith was like 5th place in the heat race, and they dropped back to, I think Rod Bell took 12th and Smith like 15th. So they were like right there in the heat race, which is where on a good day they would be in a heat race. And we went into the LCQ, and Rod Bell and AJ and Smith were all right there in the first turn, and Alex was real far back. Rod Bell got into the first place. Smith was sitting 3rd, and AJ was sitting like 6th. And I think Ray was like 13th, 14th. And I was like, all right, let's see what Rod Bell can do now that he's leading. He hasn't really led any of the races yet so far in the LCQ. So let's see. And he had Hartraft and Deuce behind him, and I think maybe Champion. And I was like, all right. And I kind of expected Brandon to kind of start reeling him in pretty quickly, and I would watch a lap, and Rod Bell was up 2 seconds, and I was like, okay. And then I was watching Rod Bell, and Rod Bell was riding really good, a flawless, race at that point. Smith was in 4th, and Ray was riding like Ray rides, and I was trying to watch him in the corner of my eye to see where he was and what was going on. He was picking people off left and right. And then I was holding my breath for Rod Bell because I knew, he was riding tight, but he looked really good and flawless. And we got down to 2 laps, and I was like, well, we're going to get 2 guys in the main event here, if not 3. Smith, I think, was in 5th at the time. Ray passed him and went into 4th. And I was like, we got a guy sitting in 1st and 4th right now. And then Rod Bell tucked the front end in the whoops and ended up holding up, I think, Brandon and Deuce. And Ray went around them on the outside and went into 1st place. And it was another little switcheroo for us. But it was just, I felt we were really good there. And everyone rode really good. I felt real bad for Justin. He did everything he needed to do. He looked good in the whoops. And there were the long set of whoops for Supercross. And he looked good in them until he didn't look good anymore.
Yep. That's usually how the whoops look, right? Everyone looks great until they don't. It's bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ken Roxon went through those whoops faster than anybody all day until the one. So can't blame him. I mean, it gets the best guy. So
absolutely. And I already said I sucked at riding dirt bikes, so I have no room to talk when it comes to that.
So Supercross ends. We get a couple weeks. We're getting ready to do the Pro Motocross Championship. What's the roster look like for the summer? And then I know we talked a little bit ahead of time. Jordan Jarvis obviously had some injuries, so we're hoping to get her back soon. But just kind of fill me in on what it's looking like right now. I mean, we got the Pro Motocross starting up.
So we're racing Saturday in Pala, obviously. We have Jeremy Smith, Justin Rodbell, and Alex Ray for our outdoor team. And like I said, Jordan Jarvis is on our roster. She's been riddled with injuries all season this year. And she's been off the bike for a little while. She's doing everything she can to get where she needs to be. She's a hard worker. She grinds it out and she puts in the effort. And unfortunately she's had a couple bad cards dealt this year. I'm hoping that we're going to get back for Red Bud. But everything's tentative right now until she gets a little bit more seat time. But that's what it's looking like right now. But I'm excited to go to the outdoors. I think last year I learned a lot from our outdoor season. It was atrocious. There was no way to sugarcoat it. I failed on a lot of levels. There was a lot of things that I thought I was prepared for that I wasn't. We had a lot of issues that were out of my hands that weren't in my control. But it was definitely a learning year. And I feel going into it, we did a lot better, I hope, with preparations and what to do. I know Alex rode the bike today with Kawasaki and all those guys out at one of the tracks out there, and it came back. He was very happy, just made a couple of adjustments. That's took my nerves down a little bit knowing that. But my expectations and my goals for outdoors is that we're scoring ports every moto. I think our team is a solid team. And I know that's a high task with the guys and the entries and who's racing, but Rod Bell and Smith are outdoor guys without a doubt. They have a lot less seat time in Supercross, and those guys enjoy the outdoors, and I expect them to have top 20s. And I think we're going to have some races that are outside the top 20, but I'm hoping we're right there on the bubble, and that's where we are. I think Ray is the same. I put him in the top 20 category there, and as he should be. And I think those guys are going to be dicing it out, which is going to make it more nerve-wracking for me, because I think those guys are going to be in the same cluster. Outdoors, I put them all in the same category. So as much as I love that, it's going to be stressful. But my goals is, and what I would like to see is top 20 every moto. And that was one of my goals last year, was to have, all of our riders finished within the top 20. And we did it at Pala last year. It took us all year to come up with that goal. But I think with how the guys are riding and the things we've learned, I think that's a very reasonable, high expectation of the guys.
Right. And Alex Ray has a lot of Supercross experience, a resume to back it up. He's good at it. Rod Bell and Smith, again, newer to them. Are they like just rubbing their hands together now? It's like, hey, Ray, we're coming for you, teammate, because they're back in their world. I mean, Smith too, but Rod Bell, he's an outdoor shredder. So I have to imagine he's pretty fired up right now to get through Supercross, learn a bunch, but he's getting back into his turf. Is he pretty fired up?
Yeah. Rod Bell's ready. He did not have the Supercross season he wanted. And personally, I think he had a great Supercross season. To come into a Supercross season in the 450 class, how stacked it was, and showing progression every single time he hit the track is huge. But he's a young, competitive person. And for him, he's looking at a numerical or the goal of making a main event in the 450 class, and he fell short on that. But for me and my expectations of him, he did exactly what I needed him to do. And he's got the mindset of how the intensity level is in the 450 class. So next year when he goes down to 250 class, he's going to have, a little upper hand with a lot of the stuff, because he knows the intensity where it needs to be, and he's got a little bit more experience. So I think it was the right call for him to run 450s. And I think it was a great learning year. I think with that though, I think that's created a little bit more motivation for the outdoors for him. Yeah. Just because he wasn't getting the results he wanted, he was getting frustrated and kind of sick of riding Supercross. So I know he started riding motocross a little bit earlier than probably the other guys did, which is made him have better results in Supercross because he was happy again riding a bike. Yep. And I think that's going to shine. I think Ray's in a good spot too, coming into it. Like I don't think we're going to have the same issues, and I think he's excited. And Smith, you can never sleep on him. I mean, every time you watch him, he's very I would compare him to like a Kevin Windham. Very fluid on the bike. You look at him and you're like, he's not going that fast. And then you look at a lap time, you're like, wait, when did he run that? Because his style is not that overriding the bike or over revving or just moving around a lot. He just stays so neutral on the bike. And I mean, he qualified 9th place at Southwick the last time we went to Southwick, so he's got some good qualifying times. He's got the stuff. His endurance wasn't there, but you got to remember last year, Smith and Rod Bell didn't run any Supercross. Yeah. They were sitting home, they were working, and they kind of like went from sofa to racing and kind of raced into shape. And both of them now are in, more of a race shape than they were last year. So I expect, a little bit more from them in that aspect of it. And I think it's going to show.
Smith's a good starter too, right? I mean, I've heard from his competition. They're like, man, I hate starting next to that guy. It's like a light switch.
I mean, he'll get some starts and he'll run up there. Like I said, you'll look at him and you'll be like, oh, he's not going that fast. And then you'll look at lap times and you're like, no, he's there. So I'm excited. I really am.
And to throw one more diss at A-Ray, it's the opposite, right? He looks like he's going Mach 12. Sometimes you're like, Alex, tame it down, buddy. You'll go faster if you slow down a little bit.
He does not use the throttle to control the movement of the bike in any way, shape, or form. That thing is pegged at all times. And then it's everything else is controlling how fast he goes.
Oh, how many clutches did you guys go through this year?
Just enough.
Did he use more clutches than the rest of the team? That's all I want to know. Did he use more than the whole team?
I don't think the other guys went through a clutch all season.
Oh my God. There you go. I knew it.
Honestly,
right,
I don't even think I would have to change tires for AJ. Like, I could just let him run the same tires all year. He's so light on a bike that there's very little wear ever.
Yeah. And again, no outdoors for AJ. I'm assuming he has the same DNA that I have. He loves the indoors, the outdoors, find other things to do.
We have a running joke. He tells me every year he's going to race like 2 or 3 nationals.
Oh yeah.
Every year. He's like, I'll do Buds, I'll do Southwick, and I'll do like High Point or Unadilla. And I'm like, all right. And I'll be like, hey, I got a bike ready for you. You ready? He's like, well, no, I can't do that one. I got a school here. And I'm like, all right, well, we're definitely ready for Southwick. And he'd be like, well, I got a school. And I'm like, all right.
That's convenient. That's convenient with the calendar, buddy. We know what you're doing, AJ.
He knows the game.
Hey, so fast forward. My last question for you. Let's fast forward to the end of the outdoors. We get into the off season. What's the plan? I mean, you don't have to reveal. I know you said you have something that you're working on that's pretty awesome. But just what's the hope? What's the goals? What's the plan as we get into that off season? You can take a breath and start building for hopefully a back to the standard 22 or full 17 round schedule in 22. What's the hope? What's the goal? What are we looking at for next year?
There's an off season.
Yeah. What I mean, I
feel like there is no off season.
It's a different time to freak
out. So, I mean, obviously I'm always working on the next step in the next year, and, and on the larger deals, those things are made a year or 2 in advance, so with that, it's very tough, but I am looking forward to doing some different options. I have some different things I'd like to change up, and I just want to continue to learn and grow. I mean, it's every year. I mean, our program is getting better, as it should, and I would expect nothing less. So I'm hoping next year we turn some more heads and we're going to get some more support on. And I've been doing a lot of research on other industries, whether it's NASCAR or other things like that, of marketing and what's been successful for them and why, they've been able to reach different levels than what our industry is. And since I'm not stuck I didn't grow up in this sport the same way everyone else did, as far as like an industry thing, I think my approach is a little bit more outside the box thinking, which could be hurting me at some levels, and it could be helping me at some other angles, but I'm not stuck into the same ways that everyone else is, retrained in over and over again. So I've pitched a couple ideas about something that's unique and different for our industry to a couple people. And there's been a couple people that have thought it was a really good idea and angle. So it may pan out. And when I have more concrete stuff on that, we'll talk about it. Cause right now it's just kind of, we're talking at a round table on that. I still think it'd be fun to have like a 20-person team. And hear me out. Like, you're laughing because you're already judging me, and you have those judging eyes.
You already said you have anxiety. You want 20 of them?
But elimination, we do it like Survivor. We do 20 riders, very basic equipment. Each weekend, the poorest, performing person is off the team, and then we go to the outdoors with 3 riders.
Oh man,
that are ready to go.
I like it. It's like Survivor.
Listen, and we'll do like a ceremony. We'll do tiki torches. Trying to find 20 bikes at this point of life with COVID is impossible. So maybe we'll do it with something else. What if we do like STACYC races in the parking lot?
I like it. And there's plenty of those. They're all over the place. So.
See, we can do STACYC races, and whoever finishes in the top 3 in the parking lot gets to race that night.
I love it, dude. I'm all about it. I'm all about Survivor Supercross, man. Survivor Supercross. There'd be T-Bone City everywhere.
Hey, we'll put a nice, like, a better team manager, and it'll be solid. We'll get it. You want to manage?
I love it. I'm pretty busy on race
the pay is not good.
I'll stick with what I'm doing. I'm very happy, and I can't wait to talk about what you're doing on television. Let's just go with that. So, hey, Jason, thanks for the time, man. I appreciate you coming on. Again, love what you're doing. I have to imagine that seeing Club MX and Smart Top and all these private teams that have grown. I have to imagine that inspires you. You're doing the same thing. So good luck with the team, the suspension, and pumped to see you in 2022 after you have a great summer.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me and listening to my story. And, you know, everyone's been embracing the program, which has been awesome. So it's been fun. And again, I'm the biggest fan of the sport, which is, it's making it awesome, because there wasn't too long ago that I was watching TV or watching things like this on television or in a patrol car in the middle of the night trying to catch up. Like it's cool to be here and to sit here and say that my name's mentioned with some of these people that I can't always sit here and say I feel is deserving.
Well, I appreciate it and I admire what you're doing. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.